The Department of International Relations and Cooperation has demarched the Israeli ambassador to South Africa, Eliav Belotsercovsky, to discuss what their statement calls recent unfortunate conduct related to the unfolding tragic Israel-Hamas war. Earlier, Minister Naledi Pandor indicated that the ambassador had made a number of comments without having discussed them with senior members of the government, warning that it could not and would not be tolerated. So let's discuss this further. We're going to be joined by International Relations and Cooperation Director General Zane Dangor. Zane, good afternoon, and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon.
Perhaps on what transpired in Cape Town a little earlier on, we've seen, protests, pro-Palestinian protests around the country, particularly in Cape Town today. There were some chaotic scenes and tensions. How would you comment on what's transpired to date?
Look, the only thing I could see was waiting for this interview, so I was watching it as you were broadcasting it. I think that the tensions are understandable, but we should also call on all to allow people to express their views and feelings without intimidation. South Africa prides itself on freedom of expression and association. Of course, we understand the tensions and anger are extremely high. We've seen similar scenes in London and New York and other places. So I think that the leadership of the marches on both sides should call for restraint and allow people to express their views.
All right, thank you for those sentiments, Mr. Dangor. Perhaps also going into the ambassador being demarched, you could give us some context for those who've just tuned in, what the focus of the meeting was with the ambassador. Has there also been an update from the ambassador on that front?
Look, the demarche was the result of the cabinet instruction to DIRCO, and essentially the demarche was for South Africa to convey to the Israeli government South Africa's position on what is happening in Gaza. We explained that while we, as South Africa, have condemned the attacks on Israeli civilians on 7th of October, the response by Israel, particularly on Gaza, in the days after that, breached all forms of international laws, including international criminal law, international human rights law. And we needed to convey just how South Africa's displeasure with this. The number of deaths are staggering. It's over 11,000, with over 4,400 of those deaths being children. Being women, and also to explain that given the fact that there was no movement on respecting when calls for a ceasefire, there was a General Assembly call for a ceasefire with over 2/3 of the member states voting for that. The Israeli government responded with more bombardment, and as part of our censure of that disregard for international law, including the General Assembly resolutions, we decided to recall our diplomats in Tel Aviv. We stated very clearly that South Africa calls for a ceasefire with immediate effect, and given that the ceasefire is not forthcoming, we needed to show our displeasure using the diplomatic channels available to us.
Some of the view that downgrading the embassy in Israel wasn't enough. Also, there's been mounting pressure for the embassy to be closed here, the ambassador to be recalled. Is this something that you're considering? Perhaps also cutting economic ties? What's under discussion on that front?
So at this stage, South Africa doesn't have a comprehensive boycott of Israel when it comes to economic and even like the cultural side. I think there's just been a practice where people have been encouraged not to go. I do think that, we will take our guidance from Cabinet. We understand there'll be a debate in Parliament later this week on these matters. But of course, as government, we will take our instructions from Cabinet on this. So we are listening to the many, many voices calling for complete closure. We're getting letters on a daily basis. So we will take our instructions from Cabinet on this. But at this stage, government, as DIRCO in particular, doesn't have a mandate to do that.
Okay. After DIRCO demarched the Israel ambassador to South Africa, what was his response? We've also seen sentiments from the South African Jewish Board of Deputies saying that the decision by government having demarched the Israeli ambassador to South Africa shows that it's siding with Hamas, that the ambassador is also being bullied. How would you like to respond to those sentiments?
Surprising. I think the South African Jewish Board of Deputies statement came out before the actual demarche took place. The demarche was actually held in a very collegiate manner. We expressed our displeasure in a way that couldn't amount to any form of bullying, and we stated the issues that we've just stated. The South Africa's position isn't one about siding with Hamas. South Africa's position is about siding with people that have been oppressed for over 75 years, and in a direct response to the extreme violence that's being meted out in Gaza, which essentially is something that the entire world is agreeing with us on. We've seen the Arab League summit yesterday, together with the OIC, calling for example, an arms embargo on Israel, and essentially taking a position very similar to what South Africa has taken. We're calling for a ceasefire. We're calling for immediate talks towards a just and lasting peace. And I think the idea that we should be sort of boxed in as supporters of Hamas is a way of deflecting from the real situation. We've criticized the actions of Hamas on the 7th of October, but like many others, including Israeli NGOs and others, commentators have said there is a context, the same context that the Secretary General of the General Assembly mentioned, is that this violence did not begin on 7th of October. However regrettable the violence of 7th of October was, this violence is decades in the making, and the only way to stop this violence is to stop the occupation and to move towards a just and lasting peace.
Mr. Dangor, speaking about positions and a united stance, yesterday at the meeting of Saudi Arabia and African countries, there was a strong call by Deputy President Paul Mashatile to leaders at large to take a similar stance. Arab nations could not agree, and I wonder at this point, given these divisions, what impact it's having on the raging war in Gaza from your vantage point in terms of this, the ceasefire that had been called and steps to end it all.
So I've just seen the agreement that was reached yesterday by the Arab leaders together with the OIC, and the agreement touches on a number of important issues. It calls for a ceasefire. Secondly, it actually debunks and challenges the idea that Israel has the right to defend itself. It cites international law that says an occupying power cannot use military force against a population that it occupies. The agreement also calls for a binding resolution at the Security Council to ensure that the ceasefire is enforced, the end to the violence is enforced, and a binding resolution at the Security Council also means that disregard for it could also have countermeasures from the international community. So I do think that what Deputy President was saying was supported by the ultimate agreement that was reached by the joint meeting of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Countries, the OIC.
All right, thank you for those sentiments. I just want to turn your attention to the humanitarian assistance from South Africa. What is South Africa doing at this point to contribute in terms of relief efforts and updates in terms of South Africans in Gaza? What information are you able to share about that at this point?
So the first one on the humanitarian solution, we are partnering with Gift of the Givers. We will also welcome any other organizations that would like to contribute, but we are partnering with Gift of the Givers given the fact that they have a significant presence in Gaza. They had an office in Gaza, so they are ready to supply together with South Africa urgent supplies. Unfortunately, Rafah Gate, the aid going into Rafah Gate has been very slow. We've asked for the Egyptian government to give us an indication of when, for example, the aid that would be supplied together with Gift of the Givers and the government of South Africa can go through Rafah Gate. I just suspect that it's going to be slow, given that Rafah Gate, the level of aid going in as a result of the increased bombardment is very slow.
Mr. Dangor.
With regards to people in in Gaza, we've got 22 South Africans that's on the UN waiting list for being taken out of the country out of the Strip when it's safe through Rafah Gate. At this stage, on the daily list we are supplied, South Africa is not yet being put on that list. That list is compiled by Israel in the main. And at the moment, South Africa, together with countries like Ireland, are at the bottom of the priority list for people to be taken out.